Welcome to She Makes It Work with Gabby and Abi. Today we're talking about the 7 mistakes at work that are holding you back.
All right, our next mistake you're making that's holding you back, and boy, do we have a recent example of this one, is not asking clarifying questions. This is a huge one for me.
Clarifying questions. What do you mean?
Great clarifying question, Abby. So, clarifying questions can be somebody comes to you. Let's say you're a freelancer or just whatever role you're in. Somebody comes to you and wants something, has an idea, and you are going to do that thing. Clarifying questions would be asking them information that you need in order to be successful at the thing you're doing. So if they want you to build something, it's asking them around specs, it's asking questions to draw them out. If it's your boss coming to you asking for a presentation, it's finding out when do you need this by, but also what is the content, what is the purpose of this presentation, how do I know it's successful?
Who's the audience?
Who's the audience? What's your intention behind it? What kind of voice do you want in the presentation? You should be having a million questions, to be honest. And so if somebody's trying to teach you something, it's the same thing. Let's say this was a course instead of like, a podcast. I would want the audience to be asking us clarifying questions along the way so that they can truly understand what we're trying to convey. Does that make sense? Like we're taking the time to either present a course or to give you an assignment or to contract you for work. We want to know that you're engaged.
But don't questions make me look dumb?
No, they do not. And normally, if you think your question is going to make you look dumb, it's so important to remember two things. One, somebody else has that same question. And I tell people that all the time. And in consulting, we actually have this thing where the consultant should be the person asking the dumb question in the room because honestly, like, especially in 20-person meetings, 3 people know what's going on. I mean, honestly, right? And so someone needs to ask those questions. Um, I would say that the only caveat to that is asking context appropriate questions, which we'll definitely get into later because some people ask things that are maybe not meant for that meeting. But if somebody's talking to you about a specific topic and you're asking them questions about that topic because you need to go implement the thing they're telling you about, ask your questions. They're not dumb. Do you need to do it to be successful? Then it's not a dumb question.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I always say is it's better to ask a potentially bad question than to create a bad product.
Oh, that's powerful. Yeah. Think about the end goal. Exactly. If you don't, what's the opportunity cost of not asking that question?
Well, this goes to our recent example. So, Abby and I were working with a vendor for something. And right away, the vendor who was working on something that required understanding a lot about me and Abby and our intentions didn't ask us a lot of questions about our preferences. And so they took one thing that we said kind of offhand, something we like, and they ran with that.
Yeah.
And they ran too far with it,
In the
right?
wrong
In the
direction.
wrong
Yeah.
direction. And so they didn't ask the clarifying questions in the intake meeting, you'll call it. And then once we gave feedback that we weren't on track, they also didn't then ask us more questions at the time.
Yeah.
And then throughout this process we were going through, they continued to not ask clarifying questions along the way. Well, you mentioned that this wasn't working. Can you tell me why? Or you said you like this versus that. Tell me what you like about it so that I can better understand your preferences. Or even going back and saying, okay, well, you accepted this other thing, but this thing you're saying makes me think that was actually a no for you. The colors.
Yeah.
They could have then asked us, are you sure you still like the colors? Because it sounds like maybe you don't. That's not your
Yeah.
aesthetic. And so, anyway, I just thought that was such a great opportunity for somebody who was doing some freelance work to really show up well with us and go through a great process. And the first misstep was not asking clarifying questions.
Yeah, I've done that, and maybe you've done that in the past where you think you know what you're working on and you go and you deliver it and it just missed the mark. And you're like, where did I go wrong? I know for me, it was assumptions early on at the beginning. I
Mm-hmm.
thought I knew where I was going or what was wanted, and I didn't repeat back. What I'm hearing you say is, tell me where I'm wrong. And didn't ask any further questions. I'm like, oh, got it, seen it before. I've done this. I can implement it. And then I deliver it and they're like, this isn't what I wanted at all. That's your first inkling that you need to ask better questions. Ask more questions. Okay, what did I get wrong? Where did I miss it? What could be better? And as you're gathering information, think about implementing what you're what they're telling you, because that will immediately give you more questions. I know for me, if I'm like, okay, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Okay, I'm thinking about doing X, Y, and Z. Oh, I'm going to need to know, hey, what about where do we want to put it? In what order we want to put this? Like, what other questions? How is this being used? Who are, again, going back, who's the
Is
audience?
the
Who's my
audience? Yep.
user? All of those questions, really understanding, where you're coming from and where your users are coming from. And if you think you know and you don't clarify, you're setting yourself up for potential risk.
Yeah, and we'll talk a lot in our shows and episodes about the danger of assumptions, but that one, the you think you know but you don't, is hard. It is hard because it does happen where you think you're understanding something, but in the consulting world, one of the first things we teach consultants is confirm for understanding. So restate for understanding. So if a consultant hears some, and we say this to the most junior of consultants, but that's something that people need to carry through the entire time is restate for understanding and for clarity. So I thought I heard you say this. Did you mean this? Or first confirm that you heard it right. And then also just dig deeper. Like, what do you need to know about that user? So it's though you think you know, and in the project world, a lot of times we call it trust but verify. And I think
Mm,
the same thing is true where trust yourself but verify the information.
yeah.
Trust yourself but validate your assumptions and just make sure that what you think you know is true. And when we were working with this partner, they knew Abby a lot better than they knew me, and they were going by what they thought they knew about Abby and what they thought Abby was saying, and not understanding that we're building something new together and they need to take the time to understand that concept,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a great learning experience. And it's really important because, again, we talk a lot about these professional skills. And I just want to keep reemphasizing that it is translatable to any interactions you're having with other people.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you don't work in IT or you're not in consulting, you are doing something professionally and you are working with other human beings. And the asking clarifying questions is one of the most powerful things you can do. And if you don't do it, you're not going to get rehired as a freelancer.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get a recommendation. You might get your contract cut.
Yeah.
And the same thing's true in every context, like it scales to whatever context you're working in.
Yeah. Definitely. If you think you know, trust but verify.
I learned that one the hard way.
I think we all have. I've definitely been like, wow, what an opportunity to do it better next time.
Number 6 of mistakes you're making at work that are holding you back are not managing yourself.
Not managing yourself. So how am I supposed to manage myself? Don't I have a manager?
Your manager's job is not to tactically manage you. And especially this is something that was very clear when we transitioned to the consulting world, which is they call it people leader instead of manager. And I really
Mm,
like that concept because it really shows that they're not there to manage your work for you. And they're
mm,
not there to manage like how you do your own time management. And they'll give you feedback. They're responsible for your professional development, your career transitions. Right.
yeah.
But everything else you're actually responsible for. And I think that taking this as an opportunity. So depending on your stage of career, maybe you've mastered this, maybe this is a new thought for you. So I'd say sit with this for a minute and really think about it, which is, do you understand that you are in control of your job performance in your career? And once you really understand that you have ownership and control over that, that's when you realize that you need to be managing these things yourself. I find so many people who do expect other people to manage things for them. And a good example is that developer I was talking about earlier who's like, well, you should have printed out the calendar for me. And I'm like, okay, no, I'm not your mommy, right? I'm not putting the
Right.
calendar on the refrigerator. That is a self management thing. I've given you the schedule, I've been holding you accountable for it. Where is your self management?
You're a big kid now.
Mhm,
Yeah,
and
you're
so
grown up.
managing yourself is time management. It's all of the things we talked about with holding yourself accountable.
Yep.
It's taking responsibility for your professional development and
Mm,
taking feedback and using that to get better and better. And it's also managing your emotions and managing how you show up with other people.
yeah.
And that's a big one for me. And I'll use myself as an example where I have such a big personality. And I know, and it really comes through at work. I love work, and so I'm always passionate, and I have a big personality, and I have big thoughts, and I have big emotions. And one thing I had to learn early on is that the energy I bring into a room massively affects everybody else in that room.
Mm.
And so that's a huge moment of self-awareness of how you impact the people around you, but it's what do you do with that? And so I had to learn early on to manage the energy I bring in to any conversation in any room. And then once I was aware of that, I could be very intentional of how I show up energetically to a meeting, into a conversation. So if I'm showing up positive and bubbly with my big personality, everybody else feels happier. If I'm showing up optimistic, everybody's more interested in problem solving. If I show up with a future forward or an innovative mindset, everybody else is thinking that way. It's especially true the more you rise in leadership. So let's say you've got this big personality and these big thoughts, and then you also are now starting to get the job titles that bring with it a lot of authority. It's exponentially larger the impact you're having on the people
Mm.
around you,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
And that's a responsibility.
Yeah.
That personality is a responsibility and that job title is a responsibility. And that's where you have to be really intentional because the dangerous side, the flip side of that is if I show up agitated, if I show up upset, if I show up angry, frustrated, or stressed out, what
Leaks
does that
onto your
mean?
team. It leaks onto your team.
Everybody in the room.
You can feel it. Yeah. With great power comes great responsibility, right?
Yes.
Spider-Man, right?
And just, yes, yes, Spider-Man. And just knowing that that's a thing is so important because you mentioned it impacts my team. It's worse. It impacts my client.
Ooh,
If
yeah.
I show up agitated, even if I think I'm masking it, by the way, it's
Mhm.
not like I'm sitting there going, yeah, I was raging in that meeting and oh, who knew? Everybody was affected. No, I'm literally saying if I'm agitated, but I think I'm masking it, everybody picks up on it. The vibes are off.
And the vibes never lie.
Nope. And it impacts everybody, my team, my client, some other partner or vendor we're working with. Everybody's thrown off because my energy is off. And that's true for a lot of people. This isn't just a Gabby problem. I'm just
Yeah.
using this as an example of self
Mhm.
management, which is that you have to be aware of your impact on other people, whether that's energetically, whether that's with your words, whether it's like the vibe thing. And I'll end a meeting. I'm not going to lie. I've ended meetings because I've recognized that me or somebody else has thrown off of the energy of the meeting and it's not going to be a good meeting.
Oh, wow.
And I'll call it. I'll be like, you know what? I think we're just not in the headspace for this today. And let's do this another day. That is part of managing it. Does that make sense? Managing
Yeah.
isn't just knowing it and then trying to put a
And
mask on all the
pushing
time.
through to
Right.
everyone's detriment.
Yep. And
Yeah.
so it took me years to learn this lesson and I wish I'd learned it much younger. I'm not going to lie. I genuinely do because I didn't really get this until my early to mid 40s,
Wow.
how big this was and how powerful it is to say to yourself, I'm having a terrible day and everything I touch is going to be crap today and
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. And to just call it. And so this is one of those moments where I'm going to reveal a secret. A lot of leaders who suddenly have a last minute conflict, they're not in a good headspace and they know they're not going to show up well and they've canceled that meeting for that reason. And nobody says at that level, you're not getting an email from your VP or CEO going, I'm taking a mental health day. They are taking mental health days. We all do it. And so if you're having that moment where you're going through something personal or frankly, you just woke up wacky that day and you're like, you have to have that understanding of how you're going to impact the people around you. It's better to not do it.
Yeah.
That's part of self management. It isn't just managing your emotions in the moment, it's also understanding that sometimes a better choice is to take the day off or have a quiet day. I've told people, you got a
Mhm.
text from me one day like this
Yep.
where I'm like, I'm having a quiet day today.
And I really appreciated that communication because, especially over text, I was like, oh my God, are you mad at me? Like, is she's not responding? But I'm taking a quiet day. That was a clear boundary. And I really respected and appreciated that. I could tell you managed yourself really well. So I didn't have to worry about managing you
That's
or
right.
managing me in front of you or anything like that. It was very clear. And again, we've said clarity is kindness. It was
Hmm.
very clear. And I really appreciated that for sure.
Yeah, thanks. And
Yeah.
it took me too long to master that. But But the reason I'm telling you that this is a secret that leaders are doing is because I want you to give yourself permission to do the same thing. It's not just leaders do it and you can't. Whatever your title or role or level is, we're all human, and you don't always have to over reveal what's going on with you in order to take some space or set a
Mm-hmm.
boundary. And you don't even have to say, I'm taking space. You can literally take a sick day if you need to, but, or just move a meeting. Like there's so many times where I'll sit down with my client and we're supposed to present to some executive and she is having a bad day. And I know she's having a bad day. And I'll ask, is this the day for this meeting? Are we
Yeah.
going to be our best selves in this meeting?
Yeah.
Do we need to do this today?
Yeah, that's a really great way to care about each other professionally as well. Is
Oh,
like, I
yeah.
noticed something's off. Are you in the headspace? It's asking for consent, which that's
Mm-hmm.
always a great thing to do. Are you in a headspace to hear this? Yeah, and I think that that's really caring. It's a really caring thing to do that we don't get a lot in the professional world. It was push through, do it anyway, do it. You just go, 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 and then we wonder why we're burnt out.
And that's my professional style. So if you've taken the disc profile, I'm a high D. If you haven't taken it, it means that I'm aggressive and I will keep focused on the goal until we hit it. And so the visual of that is always the person ramming through a wall,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's me.
That's you.
And what I've had to learn is that A, that's not always the best approach. And part of self-management is knowing when that's going to be detrimental and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, hey, that wall can wait.
Yeah.
That wall can wait. I'm not in a good place. The person I'm partnering with isn't in a good place. Like it's better sometimes to not do the thing. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe it's not the right day. But if we're not going to show up well, do we need to do this today? I don't
Yeah.
know. It's really powerful to understand that that is part of self management, that other people are doing it, and that managing yourself means being so focused on doing good work that you will manage your time and learn the lessons you need to learn and grow and develop, and also take those moments to say, if I'm not going to be my best self right now, do I need to be doing this?
Yeah. And going back to the accountability part, it's not saying, oh, I don't want to do this, so I'm going to cancel the whole day. I don't think that's not what we're saying. But I think there's other things that you can use besides canceling a day of like breath work and, centering meditation, and all of those things can and should be used. But I think to your point is like, if those things aren't working for you and you're just in a funk and you're not in a headspace to deal, then honoring that.
Mm-hmm.
Really honoring where you are and being a human in the workplace, not a robot.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many times, the reason I keep saying I wish I'd learned this earlier is there's so many times where I muscled through. And even if I didn't throw off the vibe of the room, because I'm super good and that doesn't always happen, but I've gone to executive steer codes where I'd spent the previous 4 hours crying.
Wow.
And then go to executive steer co and put my face on.
Mm.
And I'm like, this has to be done. Like that was always my thought is I'm so mission focused. This has to be done. And even if the meeting went fine, what was the cost to me as
Mm.
a human? What was my own human personal cost? And was it worth it? When honestly, did it matter that Steerco was Tuesday instead of Wednesday? No. I mean, yes, these executives are hard to schedule. Don't get it twisted. But you have to ask yourself that and just kind of look back and say, I kept thinking that that was winning. Was it?
And I think that goes back to the what it's not always what you do, it's why you do it. Because sometimes, yes, you're going to have to push through. But taking the time to ask yourself, can I, then it turns it into a choice that I
Mm-hmm.
can, but I'm choosing to because of other reasons. I'm choosing to move forward. And so you don't feel like you have to, which leads to more burnout, right? When it becomes a choice, it becomes powerful and you're making that choice okay, I can't or I won't move it for a certain reason. We need to push through, but I know that I'm doing it and it's being intentional about doing so.
Yep, because, maybe you decide it'll be worse for me later if I don't do it now.
Right.
But again, you're in control. You're empowering yourself. You're not a
You
victim.
still manage me.
You're still managing. You're managing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think this one's really, really powerful. And, given the examples we've given, I think it's really clear how this can truly hold you back.
Yeah.
And sometimes holding you back is holding you back from being your best self or holding you back from being, having a good day. But also sometimes the person who keeps muscling through isn't the person who gets promoted. Because when you're trying to get promoted to executive leadership, one of the things they want to know is that you know how to prioritize yourself. that you
Yeah.
know how to take care of yourself so that you're the best leader. So also think about those moments in terms of what story am I creating about myself
Yeah.
and my ability to manage what I need to be doing, because what you're measured on changes. And
Yeah.
so you may think you're doing the right thing for what you think you're being measured on, but sometimes that's not it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lot there.
A lot in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So back to the point of managing yourself, this is a really important skill that you'll do all the time everywhere. When we were planning our episodes for our podcast, we had a different cadence. Episode 2 was going to be um, this session that I was very excited about, this topic I was very excited about. But as we were doing prep, she was asking me questions and I was trying to reframe it, and I just had this feeling the night before we were about to film, and we had our episodes all ready. We had already talked about it. We had done our prep, and I realized that morning I was like, it's just not quite ready. And I was worried that she was going to be mad because I'm changing the plan, but I communicated that. I was like, it just doesn't feel ready. And I took a risk, of I thought you were going to be mad. And turns out, no, like that's what she needed to hear from me. I was able to manage myself instead of pushing through and doing this topic before I was ready and risk coming off as disingenuous and putting on airs or, showing up as somebody who's not me. I decided to pull the episode and put it down. The cookie needs to go back in the oven for a little bit. They're
Needs
a
a little
little
more time to
squishy,
bake.
they're a little squishy in the middle, and we want perfect cookies, not underbaked cookies. So I really, appreciated you, honoring that and respecting that it just wasn't ready. But I think that was definitely me managing myself, because I could have pushed through. I could have been like, nope, I told Gabby we were going to do this. This is what we agreed on. And pushed through, and the product would have suffered for it.
Yep. And I love that because it started with that self-awareness. It started with that moment of being like, I don't know if I'm ready for this one. I don't know if this is
Yeah,
going to be as good as I want it to be.
exactly.
Yeah.
Last but not least,
Number
number
7.
7.
Oh boy. I'm saying oh boy because this one is near and dear to my heart because I see people fumbling the bag on this one all the time. Number 7 is not solving your own problems.
Mm,
And as a leader, this one is actually really disappointing to see in my employees and my team and the people around me because I don't know if they realize how much it disempowers them.
oh, disempowers. Say more.
Yeah, disempowers. And you've used the phrase recently, and I'm going to pull that in, giving my power away to other people.
Mm, mhm.
And it was so interesting because when you started saying this in the context of frankly solving a problem we were having, I was like, no, that is what it is. And I've thought that this disempowers people, but the flip side is you're actively giving your power away. If you're not solving your own problem, you're giving somebody else the power to solve your problem instead of doing it
Mm,
yourself. And so not solving your own problem, I have seen people who are at an admirable leadership level, I will leave it at that, who reported to me who in the most simplistic examples would come to me and ask me for information that was available on our corporate intranet.
mm,
And whoa, there was so much wrong with that because I'm just like, do you understand like our relationship? Do you understand the purpose of my role with you? Do you understand the value I could be giving you as your people leader? And this is how you're choosing to use my time to help you for a problem you can easily solve yourself. Like to me, there's so much bundled into something that sounds like such a small example of frankly poor judgment. I'm just like, that seems like really poor judgment that that's how you would choose to use my time and energy as your people leader. If you've got 30 minutes with me, that's what you're going to do with it, is ask me to find you something on the internet. And also, when the person themselves is a people leader, that also makes me think, what kind of people leader are you for your person where you've got new hires and more junior resources where I wouldn't necessarily expect their direct reports to be able to find this information, but I would expect them to be able to. And it also tells me you can't use the resources that are at your disposal. Easy resources. You
right.
want me to find you a template? You want me to find you this HR process that's on our HR intranet? Like,
Yeah.
really? Yeah, that one's a big one for me. And I see that one shockingly a lot. Shockingly a lot. People asking their leaders and senior leaders to find them easily findable information without once trying to find it themselves.
I always love the phrase ask 3 before me.
Yeah, talk more about that.
I like that because it insinuates you can come to me, but I need you to try. I need you to try first. Ask 3 before me is, Google, ChatGPT, your neighbor, your friend, literally anyone else before you come to me. Because by the time you come to me, you should be able to show I've done this, I've done this, I've done this to try to solve my own problem. And now I haven't been able to. So showing your work basically is like, I did try. I want you to know that I tried. I'm respecting your time by showing you that I did try. So I always, and it rhymes. I like things that rhyme. They're
I love the
easier to
rhyming.
remember.
Yes,
So
I love
ask
that.
3 before me.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is such a good example too, the ask 3 before me of what you should be doing. And if you don't do it, like the reason this is holding you back is, am I going to give you more responsibility?
Right.
You're already coming to me for stuff you shouldn't be coming to me more. If I give you more responsibility, that's just more things you're going to come to me for.
Right.
And also, as somebody who is at a manager or senior manager or above level working for me, you are supposed to be able to solve much more complex problems even than that, right? Like you have your own direct reports, you have to work with HR issues, and the realization that I'm going to have to handhold you through any minor difficulty you're having, you are now more overhead than you're worth.
I was going to ask, do you as a manager look at somebody like that and you think if I give this person more work, it's going to also be more work for me?
100%.
Yeah.
And then I don't want to do it because it tells me I can't trust them. I can't trust them to be the delegate of what I'm supposed to be doing, whether that's authority, responsibility, trust, or a minor activity. Like if you can't do a minor activity that is within your job description without trying first and then you come to me, then why would I give you more to do?
Yeah.
Why would I give you more responsibilities? Why would I promote you? And again, I'm going to go back to it. Also makes me question, are you at the right level? Because you are supposed to be able to solve more and more complex problems at the manager, senior manager, and director level. And if you can't, like, why are you there?
Yeah.
And that is really, unfortunately, and especially in this economy and in this job situation,
Yeah.
if you have a, traditional office job, you don't want people around you questioning why you're there. This is not the time for that.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah. I mean, that is bad. And it's not even that I would make some sort of decision like that, but the stories I tell about you to people who make that kind of
In the
decision
rooms you're not
in
in.
the rooms you're not in,
Yeah.
they matter because people are constantly evaluating it. I'm just going to say, when it comes to the layoffs that are going on, when it comes to that, you would be shocked at the things that count against you. And you would be shocked at when you're being evaluated with your leader and their leaders, the things that are asked and the things that are spoken about. And then those become your story. And do you want the story of you as a leader to be that you can't find basic information, use company resources, or solve your own problems?
Mm.
And that's at a leadership level. When we're talking about an individual contributor level, we want you to learn those problem solving skills, whether that's a project that you're on, overcoming a technical difficulty. There's so many different ways that this shows up. But in terms of you being a truly contributing component to the team, that means that you do need to lean into the problem solving. And if you find yourself wanting to outsource your power or outsource what you want done, you need to ask yourself, how can I empower myself more to do this?
Yeah. Take ownership. Take ownership.
Take ownership and take control and all of these things. Like my big fundamental message for people is take control of your career. And the 7 mistakes that are holding you back, these are a great starting point to asking yourself, are there certain ways in which I am not taking control of my career or I'm not showing that I am? Am I not showing up the way I want to because I'm doing one or more of these behaviors? So again, to our listeners, I would challenge you, go back through the list and ask yourself, genuinely ask yourself, are you being perceived this way? Whether or not you think you're doing this, do you think somebody else thinks you're doing one of these mistakes? And then lean in, leverage your network, ask for feedback, be open to that feedback.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned, go back through this list. We actually have a list. It's in the show notes below You can download it directly from our website. The 7 mistakes you make that are holding you back.
Great. Thank you so much, Abby. And thank
Thank
you
you.
so much to our audience for joining us today for She Makes It Work. As Abby mentioned, that we've got a link to download a little cheat sheet on the 7 mistakes that are holding you back at work. And also a little pro tip to address each of them is included in that downloadable. And if you like this episode, please like and subscribe for more. And if you want us to go deeper on any of these topics and you happen to be a YouTube viewer, please leave a comment because we would love to know which of these things you'd like to hear more about.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay,
Okay,
bye.
bye.